What's up, everybody? Welcome to Move the Sticks, presented by Castrol Edge. DJ Bucky back with you here. And Buck, man, we've got a fun show today. We're going to get a chance to visit with David Cutcliffe, one of the premier sources when it comes to the quarterback position, the Duke head football coach who's coached Peyton, Eli, as well as Daniel Jones. Going to get a chance to visit with him. Also, talk a little mock draft as well. But, man, we have got to start with what's going on in Seattle. How you doing, bud?
Man, I'm doing great, but this Russell Wilson Seahawks rift is really escalated this offseason, and it was fully encapsulated and broken down in an article that appeared in The Athletic. And DJ, man, we just have to talk about some of the explosive content that came out of that article.
Yeah, it was really a great piece of reporting there by a trio of writers. I know Sando was one of them who was really dialed in with that team. And, man, let's just kind of go through it a little bit here. It just talks about kind of how there's been this growing divide between Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson. And the best way I would describe it, and how it's described in this piece, really is Pete Carroll's belief in a philosophy of running the football, playing great defense, and believing in that formula, and Russell Wilson's belief in himself and wanting more responsibility, not just in terms of putting the ball in his hands on the field, but having more of a say-so in personnel decisions and coaching moves and the direction of the franchise. Man, it was something that it sounded like as things started to get a little bit rocky this year, it sounds like it might be as bad as it's ever been.
Yeah, DJ, I think it is as bad as it's ever been, and I do believe it comes down to that. Pete Carroll has won a bunch of games with a strict philosophy. He believes in running the football, playing great defense. He wants to minimize turnovers and really make the game all about the ball. Russell Wilson is a quarterback who believes he's a playmaker. He wants to see himself in the same category as Tom Brady and Pat Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, and those other great quarterbacks. And so you have a guy that wants to play one way and a coach who wants to play another way because he knows his way has led to a lot of success and championships. And so I don't know how this ends up, but it's very, very messy right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of other different things to get into here. One of the things I thought was fascinating is it talked about Russell wanting to be kind of in that conversation with some of the greats, and it talked about two in particular. Tom Brady, who's been associated with winning, right, all the Super Bowls. So you've got that kind of legacy that he's chasing. And it looked like he was kind of on track to be kind of that winner, right? He's in a couple Super Bowls, wins one early, should have won another one against Tom, but hasn't been able to get back there. Then the other name was Breeze because of all the stats that Drew's been able to compile over such a long career. So he hasn't been able to quite get the numbers of Breeze. He hasn't been able to quite get all the championships he would seek to be known as kind of the winner like Brady. And it feels like those two things are the difference in those philosophies because Brady won several of those championships because they had great defense, because they could run the ball, and because he protected it. And Breeze put up all those stats because they put the ball in his hands. It almost seems like they're stuck kind of in no man's land in the middle between these two things.
Yeah, and I think that's what's so interesting about it all because Tom Brady is recognized as the GOAT because he's the ultimate winner, not because he has the most stats or because he has the glossiest resume when it comes to an individual playing standpoint, whereas Drew Brees is celebrated as a gold jacket guy because, look, he does have a ton of 5,000-yard seasons, but he doesn't have the wins of Tom Brady. And so ultimately, Russell Wilson has to decide, what do you want to be known as, the winner or the guy that has the big numbers? Because you can't have both based on the way that you have to play to attain those levels of success.
And I want to get a little bit to it on the Seahawks side of things because I think there's blame you could cast on both sides, on Wilson's side as well as on the Seahawks. To me, in order to play in the style and in the philosophy that Pete Carroll wants to play, great defense, run the football, to me, building a really good offensive line is a key part of that, being able to run the ball and be able to have that kind of physical identity. I think they've lost a little bit of their identity. And it's not necessarily for a lack of trying in terms of the resources. I know you can get into that and some of the resources they've put on that offensive line, but they haven't been good. They haven't been good up front. I know you can put some sacks on Russell, but I'm not even talking about the passing game. I'm talking about being able to move people in the run game and establish a physical identity. They haven't been able to do that. And I've said on here, we've talked about it forever, it's hard to find a great team with a bad offensive line. It's tough to do, man. And to me, it's also when you have a great offensive line, it's hard to be a bad team. So to me, I think fixing that, and I think Russell was, man, he didn't go out there and he doesn't just flippantly throw things out. You know it was calculated when he goes on national media shows and talks about them upgrading the offensive line. There's a source of frustration there. So I do give the organization a little bit of blame there. Again, not for lack of effort, but the offensive line hasn't been very good.
No, look, since they had that wonderkind draft where they were able to draft all of the defensive personnel, they haven't necessarily knocked it out the park when it comes to drafting in the early rounds. But I will say this when it comes to building out this team and what Russell wants. Like, it is very, very hard at times to pay quarterback top of the market money and have all of the other pieces around it. And so if you're really committed to doing that, then everybody has to kind of work and be on the same page when it comes to that. So maybe, like Tom Brady, maybe I don't take top of the market deals so I can ensure that maybe I can have some of the other things that I need to win. Some of that is defensive personnel. Some of that is the offensive line. For the team, hey, Russ, we certainly want you to be recognized as one of the top players. We'll let you throw it around the yard. But when it gets down to the nitty gritty, when we get down to the playoffs, we're going to play the way that we need to play to win the game. Because that's also what we've seen the Patriots do when they had Tom Brady. Tom Brady may throw the ball all over the yard, but when it came to December and January, they played a certain style of football that you can close your eyes and say, oh, this looks like 1970s football. And so Russ has to figure out, what does he want to be known as? What is his legacy? To be the winner or to be the guy that stuffs stats?
Yeah, and you know, Buck, when you go back to kind of how you build a team around a quarterback who gets that big second contract and is carrying a high cap figure, you know, we talk about the fact that, man, there's more pressure on you in the draft to get it right because players are going to leave. You're not going to be able to keep everybody there. It's going to cost you some players when you're paying your quarterback that much money. All the more emphasis on being able to hit in the draft. We've talked about it with the Rams, right? They've paid their stars. They've got rid of a bunch of first-round picks. A lot of pressure on those guys, Les Snead and company, to be able to hit and continually hit on these players second, third, fourth, fifth round to be able to have some cheaper starters that can play at a high level. And I think with the Seahawks, when you look at them going forward, yeah, they want to address the offensive line. They've got no first-round pick this year. They've got no first-round pick next year. So if we're saying, okay, Russell might be trying to maneuver his way out of Seattle, maybe he peers out into the future and says, man, I don't know if this thing's going to get better here. And try and just drum up a narrative that makes it easily understandable why you're trying to leave. And he doesn't do it. Again, he's calculated, man. You don't go out there and say things in the public like he said without me beginning to think, okay, he might not be doing it as Deshaun Watson has done it, to overtly come out and say, I'm not playing here. But it seems clear to me that I think he wants to get out of there.
Yeah, look, he may want to get out of there, but here's what's very interesting. The offensive coordinator bringing in Shane Waldron comes from the L.A. Rams. We've talked about the L.A. Rams system, which is an extension of the Shanahan system. I think it's a win-win for both parties. I think for Pete Carroll, it puts Russell Wilson in a structured offense that doesn't necessarily make the team rely so much on his individual playmaking ability. It's systematic. It creates open opportunities for the wide receivers. It should upgrade and enhance the running game, which is when Russell plays his best, when he's able to run the ball, throw off play action, and do some of those things. For Russell Wilson, the system gives him some comfort because there should be more consistency in terms of their ability to push the ball down the field, the home run shots, because I believe he's better as a vertical thrower than a rhythm passer. And so I think this certainly helps. I just don't understand now why Russ is so open in terms of voicing his displeasure. I do know that the money is coming due, and maybe Russ wants a little more money, but this is as messy as we've seen in the Pacific Northwest, and you can already see that the 12s are lining up behind their favored ones. Some are with Coach Carroll, others are with Russell Wilson. I can't wait to see how this plays out.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Real quick before we move on here, is there a team, if you're going to look at potential landing spot, who knows if this will happen, but if somehow they did come to the conclusion that they wanted to move away from one another here, what team would make sense?
Well, I mean, I think for Russell, I think maybe the Las Vegas Raiders, just because John Gruden loves his game, would put a running game around him. He does a really good job of doing those things. The only thing that I don't know if their defense is good enough to supplant what is building in the AFC West, first with the Kansas City Chiefs, and then when you look at the LA Chargers. I think that would make a lot of sense. Outside of that, I mean, maybe New Orleans, but there are not a lot of options because if he goes to a team that is worse, are we confident that Russ can put a lesser team on his back and have better results than the results he's having in Seattle?
Yeah, it's tricky to me because I think when you look at the teams picking high, I think with this being a pretty good quarterback draft, I think they're going to lean more towards, even though Russell's a fantastic player, looking for somebody that can be their guy for the next 10 to 15 years. I don't see those teams up there. I'm talking about the Jets and the Dolphins. Mm-hmm. I don't see that happening. And then if you're the Seahawks, he might be a great fit with the Raiders and the Saints, but you can't give me a pick that can get me a replacement. Like I got to trot somebody out there to play quarterback. I'm getting rid of a top 5 type quarterback in Russell Wilson, and you can't offer me a pick where I can get my next guy. So I don't know. There's not an easy trade partner out there if this did come to that.
No, there's not one. So there naturally be some conversation. Well, what about Houston? What about Deshaun Watson for Russell Wilson? But I don't know if both parties have enough capital to pull that off. If you're the Houston Texans, you would certainly want some more compensation to come with Russell Wilson.
You're trading a 25-year-old quarterback.
I know. To come back for Deshaun Watson, I don't know. I think it's pie in the sky stuff. And I understand that Russell Wilson has a no-trade clause. So where would Russ deem to be the best place for him? There are only a handful of teams in this league that are ready to go and ready to go win. I don't know if those teams also have a quarterback need.
The interesting thing, you said the Raiders real quick, is that I could make a case that Derek Carr kind of plays the game the way Pete Carroll wants to play the game. You talk about being able to protect the football, make good decisions, don't put your defense in a bad spot. That's kind of how Derek Carr plays.
DJ, you win a ton of games like that. We can say a lot of things about Pete Carroll, and I know people say, oh, but he didn't win before Russ. But let's look at this because it's it's a deal where they've been mutually beneficial in terms of style of play and what they built in those things. As long as you don't turn it over, you're going to win 9 or 10 games. Then it's on the quarterback to get you over the top. I think the Seahawks' frustration stems from the fact that since they've really entrusted the team to Russell Wilson and paid him the big money, they haven't been back to a Super Bowl. They haven't been to a title game. They haven't won at the highest level. What is the goal? The goal is to win it all, and they certainly haven't done that since Russell Wilson has become the ultimate playmaker for them.
Yeah, it is a really interesting story, something to keep an eye on. And one thing we do know, if Russell Wilson does stay in Seattle, he's got some good wide receivers to throw the ball to when you look at Lockett, obviously with DK Metcalf. And that's going to get us to another draft where we are loaded with wideouts. So let's get to our next-gen stats powered by Amazon Web Services because it seems like every year, Buck, we've got 2 Alabama receivers. It's like Noah's Ark going into the draft. And we've got 2 this year, but I want to look at 2 from last year. If we look at the stats from last year with Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs, their top 5 speeds on receptions last year, it's fun to look at these numbers. These are the type of numbers that NFL teams are looking at on the college season. We can see it on the NFL side. I was shocked when I saw Jerry Jeudy actually had a faster game speed number on a reception than Ruggs did.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that we always talk about, DJ, when we look at the tape. Hey, ignore the 40 time on the track, but how fast do they play? And Jerry Jeudy does display great game speed. His ability to separate and get away from coverage is really impressive. And with Henry Ruggs, we see the speed and those things, maybe a little more straight line. So some of it is a byproduct of the system, but it is fascinating to look at those numbers.
Yeah, you see those numbers there on the side as you look at Ruggs. That was the walk-off winner against the Jets. The Jets thought that it might have saved them with Trevor Lawrence till they went and beat the Rams. But man, a lot of these highlights against the Jets for these 2 guys. Not a coincidence there. But interesting, looking at these numbers, you see 21.38 MPH, 21.09 for Ruggs. Waddle, the numbers coming out of Alabama are a little bit higher than that in terms of the GPS. And we'll see those numbers next year once he gets on an NFL field. We'll be able to compare all these great Alabama wide receivers. Well, that was Next Gen Stats powered by Amazon Web Services. Now it's time for Be Prepared, presented by Castro Edge. Well, the 2020 football season did not go the way Duke and their head coach David Cutcliffe would have liked, but you will not find a more respected coach in all of football. Obviously, you know, he coached Peyton Manning, he coached Eli Manning, he coached Daniel Jones. He's one of the brightest minds in the sport, and we had a chance to catch up with Coach Cutcliffe about one of the more intriguing prospects, and quite simply, the best prospect in the upcoming draft. It is Duke head coach David Cutcliffe joining us. And Coach, it's great to see you again. We appreciate your time. I do want to ask you about somebody that you had a chance to coach against. I know somebody that you had on campus as well, you've known for a long time, and that's Trevor Lawrence.
Here's Lawrence. Fake the screen, throw to the end zone. Allen in the Clemson touchdown.
We all assume he's going to be the first pick here to the Jacksonville Jaguars. But what was your first exposure to him, and what was your takeaway?
Well, I mean, first of all, he's bigger than you think he is. He is faster than you think he is, okay? I know his high school coach well. He was well coached and trained in high school, but the things that his high school coach said about him as a person, as a teammate, I think he's displayed at Clemson that he's a great teammate, which is extremely important. Probably the greatest compliment an athlete can get is being a great teammate. And so I do think he's humble, hardworking. You know, where he is in his progression as a quarterback, I wouldn't know as much about, but he does possess the skill level, and really, again, going back to having great respect for his high school coach and remembering everything he said about Trevor makes you realize that he's got the intangibles as well.
You know, Coach, it's great to hear you talk about that. One more perspective on Trevor. Being on the opposite sideline, when you face a guy like Trevor Lawrence, what do you feel like facing a guy like that? What's the challenge when you face someone who's as talented and dynamic as a Trevor Lawrence?
Well, I mean, we didn't really have an answer, to be honest with you. The challenges is that he is big enough and he can be pure in that pocket. He can do what the guys I've coached before can do. And then he can create. So, like, we played against Johnny Manziel in his last game at Texas A&M. It's a good arm. We all know the mobility was incredible, but you knew he wasn't going to just stay in the pocket and throw it the way Trevor can. Trevor can throw out routes on time. He can throw digs on time. You know, and that's really, to me, what you've got to see is, and he's certainly the body type, you know, to do that. And I think that's the uniqueness when we didn't have an answer. I mean, if you just try to keep him in the pocket, rush high, he's going to be successful in there. You can't even not rush him and try to jump and bat balls because he's a good-sized guy. So we struggled. Again, best thing you can do is limit the number of snaps they get somehow, some way. That's the best way against those people.
Since the last time we had a chance to visit down there at Daniel Jones' Pro Day, a lot's changed, including Eli Manning's retirement. So before we get into talking about some of these quarterbacks and some guys you've got coming out of Duke this year, my question is simply, did Eli ever change your phone to a different language like he's done to so many other people?
Absolutely. Think about this. I have had Eli and Peyton at the same time during their pro careers, and they come in playing. And that is, I can't even mention the things on air. The phone language was easy. The rest of it got complicated.
You know, Coach, you've been around a lot of great quarterbacks, and it seems like we're having an evolution at the position, that we're seeing more athletic playmakers at the position than just your statuesque pocket passer. When you're looking at quarterbacks, how much does the athleticism factor into the evaluation process?
Zach calls for the snap at his chest. Quarterback draw. 15-10 to the 5. A spin, a dive, and a score!
Well, it's becoming more and more important to me personally. First of all, it fits what we have to do to be successful here. That's part of an evaluation. I will tell you this, and I had far too much time to sit at home and watch football when you don't play in a bowl game, and I was miserable. So I watched it closely, and then I was able to watch the playoffs, which I thoroughly enjoyed. It's an interesting study to see how many first downs are made on third down off of scrambles, scramble runs, and scramble throws. And that has become quite evident at every level. I felt like I told our staff all season, that's a bigger deal. And one of the things that occurs with an athletic quarterback, the most difficult thing to practice isn't tackling, it's sacking a quarterback. That's something that in college, we don't get a preseason game. You never do until a game. You're not going to hit your quarterbacks or have your quarterbacks hit in a scrimmage. So we're working on ways right now to find ways to finish sacks. As long as people are average at that and don't have the quality of athlete to finish a pass rush and finish a sack, then those quarterbacks become more and more important. And when you get out of that pocket, and I'm watching, Mahomes and Kelsey and these guys that, they know what to expect from each other. And I think it's become an extreme weapon in the NFL. Lamar Jackson, when we played him at Louisville, I didn't want him to go anywhere. I wanted him to stay in the pocket. And it's a very difficult thing to do. What we tried to do to Lamar Jackson was we just shortened the game. I tried to burn every second on offense and do everything I could to make them mad. So when they substituted, I would wait the last second and sub a D lineman because we had no answer for that type of athletic quarterback. And you know what? I don't see many NFL teams have an answer for him either.
No, they don't, Coach. They have not had an answer for him through his young NFL career. Coach, you've been generous with your time. I'm not going to keep you much longer, but something we've talked about a lot on our show and kind of following the trends of where the game was headed. We talk about positionless football, really on both sides of the line of scrimmage, having guys that can just do so many different things. We've got a guy in this draft, a tight end out of Florida, Kyle Pitts, who I think he might, if you're just going to grade the X receivers in this draft, he might be the second or third best wideout. But now he's 6'6", 240 pounds.
So 3rd and goal. Trask, end zone shot, and Pitts got it. Touchdown. 2 defenders right there, and Pitts able to rip it out of the air for the score.
To have somebody like that with that type of versatility with where the game is going, Coach, how much value is there?
I'm going to answer it this way. We were talking about Zion off the air, okay? And I would always get asked, where would you play Zion if you had him in football? And, it would be one of two places, and you just said it, both sides of the ball. It would be tight end or some kind of hybrid edge rusher. So when you've got a guy like Pitts, and I've watched Florida, and I'm friends with Dan, I don't think you have it's a matchup nightmare, and he can play outside, and he's going to issue many problems to corners just from a size mismatch. And when you go inside, his athleticism, his length is going to create all kinds of problems. I'm liking that guy vertical in any form or fashion, whether it's out of a slot or whether it's off the line of scrimmage, because as we all know, the vertical passing game has changed because they can leave their feet to hit them. Used to be a dangerous route, not so dangerous anymore, and when these guys figure that out, they can make a living going down the field.
It's been such a treat to sit here and talk with you. I've got 900 other questions that I've got in my head, but we're going to let you scoot today. We thank you so much. We value your time, and it's really been great to hear from you today.
Well, I enjoy you guys, and come see us when this pandemic's over. We'd love to see you anytime. Take good care.
That was Be Prepared, presented by Castrol Edge.
As we continue on the Move the Sticks podcast, make sure you go to NFL.com and check out DJ's top 50 prospects for the 2021 NFL Draft. We all know Trevor Lawrence is at number 1, but after him, it's anyone's guess. Meanwhile, where would those 50 prospects end up getting drafted? Here's DJ's latest mock draft.
We have a mock draft 2.0. We have the trade that just happened with Carson Wentz. So how does that impact this mock draft? We'll roll through it here. I'll start off here. Jacksonville with the first pick. Trevor Lawrence.
Lawrence flips it into flat. Howell stretches for the pylon. Touchdown! And the Tigers begin to chip away.
Buck, this to me, the pro day the other day, kind of finished that. I don't know if there's any question before the pro day, but I have no doubt whatsoever he'll be the first pick to the Jags.
No, he's going to be the first pick. The way that you saw Urban Meyer on the field, the way you saw him interacting, he was already visualizing or envisioning how Trevor Lawrence is going to be his quarterback. I think it's a done deal. He's number 1. He comes off the board first.
Yeah, number 2, the New York Jets have him going with Zach Wilson.
Zach calls for the snap at his chest. Quarterback draw. 15-10 to the 5. A spin, a dive, and a score!
I just think it makes a lot of sense. You've got a new coach. Let's push the reset button. Let Zach Wilson, who fits in this system beautifully, his ability to throw on the move and add some creativity to that offense, I think would be a fun watch. And I think you get a cheap contract here to control for the next 4 or 5 years to be able to build up some pieces in free agency around him.
Yeah, you're hitting the forward reset button because then you got 5 years to get that championship caliber squad put together. When you have a young quarterback playing on that rookie deal, makes a lot of sense. And he's also a very good player.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, let's get to number 3 here. Jamar Chase.
Now Burrow going to launch downfield for Chase. Who's got it? Touchdown, LSU.
I think we're on the same page there, right? You have him as the top receiver in the draft. I have him as the top receiver in the draft. Miami, though, I would say with this Eagles move, with them trading Carson Wentz, I would not be shocked if you did see some movement there, potentially, if the Eagles really like Justin Fields or if it's Trey Lance, whatever guy they would like. It'd be ironic if it was Trey Lance, right, going back to North Dakota State for another quarterback. But I could see the Eagles, it's in their DNA to be aggressive and potentially going up to 3. No harm, no foul for Miami. They would go back to 6 and probably still get the player they would have taken at 3.
Yeah, no, I think there's certainly all kinds of things that can happen at number 3. And I think for the Miami Dolphins, the number 1 thing that you have to do is you need a playmaker. You have to get someone on the outside that can do it. Jamar Chase is fantastic. When you go back and look at his tape, you forget out of sight, out of mind. But then he reminds you quickly, man, he is a real special player on the perimeter.
All right, I've got Justin Fields going back home, going to the Falcons with the 4th overall pick. Arthur Smith gets a quarterback to develop. He can roll with Matt Ryan next year. Let Justin Fields develop on the practice field before you cut him loose in 2022 to be your guy.
I like this, and I like this because I think there's similarities in terms of the way Justin Fields plays at his best and the way that Ryan Tannehill played at his best. And so I think it's a very similar blueprint for Arthur Smith to build this offense around a young, dynamic player, someone who can use his leg but also has big-time arm talent.
Yeah, the Cincinnati Bengals at 5, they need to do a much better job protecting Joe Burrow. I go back and forth here. Rashawn Slater, I think, is the better player right now. Penei Sewell probably has more upside with the size that he possesses. So I have Penei Sewell going here to the Bengals at number 5.
Yeah, I like Penei Sewell. I think Penei Sewell is another guy that we talk about out of sight, out of mind. This is a big people mover. He can move him off the ball. He can get to the next level in the run game. I think he'll continue to develop in pass protection. I like it because it's all about protecting the king. They got to protect Joe Burrow in the pocket.
All right, the interesting one here, the Eagles. In this scenario, I've got them taking Kyle Pitts, tight end out of Florida. I think a lot of people this took them back a little bit, but this is a playmaker extraordinaire who's going to be a matchup nightmare.
Remember, 1 timeout in the back here, and you're not going to need it. Kyle Pitts scores it.
I don't anticipate Zach Ertz going to be on the Eagles next year. You pair him up with Dallas Goedert, one of the better young tight ends in the league. Both these guys can play with their hand on the ground, but man, you can manipulate defenses and matchups however you want. You can line Kyle Pitts up at the X, and he'd be their best option as an X receiver on their roster right now.
Oh, I like it a lot. This is something that I also thought about in my mock draft. Like, put him there because he's a weapon. He's a playmaker. And we've seen these teams, and it reminds me going all the way back to the Baltimore Ravens years ago when they had Todd Heap and Shannon Sharp. And Shannon Sharp was kind of that X factor. I believe Kyle Pitts is someone that is like that. You're going to get a special player on the perimeter.
Yeah, Detroit, it's kind of a long rebuild coming there, and I've got them going with somebody that can anchor that defense. Micah Parsons, the linebacker from Penn State. as much as I love the physicality and the speed, it's actually his ability to cover, I think, that's going to really, really have an impact there for the Lions.
Yeah, I think he's been lost in this process. Like, I think people have kind of forgotten
He's a good
about
player, man.
Micah Parsons. And then when you turn on the tape, I think he is a bully between the tackles. He can do a lot of different things. His size, speed, physicality, and toughness is something that would give some bite to that Lions defense.
All right, let's keep it rolling here with Carolina going to quarterback Trey Lance. So that's 4 quarterbacks in the top 8. We'll see. Carolina could go after a veteran. I know they've tried to get in on some of these guys. We'll see if they try and push all their chips into the middle for Deshaun Watson. But we don't know if he's going to get moved. So if that doesn't happen, let's look at it as it is. They need to get a quarterback. Trey Lance with tremendous upside out of North Dakota State.
Yeah, if you listen closely, they tell you everything that they're thinking. The owner, the head coach, Matt Rule, they've talked about it. They lost 8 one-score games a season ago. They want someone who can finish in the fourth quarter. Trey Lance has special qualities when it comes to his ability to run it and throw it. Don't let that one game that he played in this year distract from what he was able to do previously. He's a very talented quarterback with a lot of upside.
All right, next, Caleb Farley, 9th pick to the Denver Broncos. Where'd he play in college, Buck?
He played at Virginia Tech. I want everyone to know. I understand he's a Hokie.
I think he's the best corner in the draft. I think he's a really, really good player. But if he's not the best corner in the draft, some people would say it's the next guy here with the Dallas Cowboys at number 10, Patrick Surtain, the second from Alabama.
Yeah, well-schooled player. Patrick Surtain is fundamentally sound, does everything that you look for, and I'm not surprised. His dad had tremendous ability. The bloodlines are certainly followed.
All right, let's rip through 11 through 15. Number 11, the Giants taking Greg Rousseau, edge rusher from Miami. San Francisco at 12, Rashawn Slater, tackle or guard. You can play him at really any of the 5 spots from Northwestern. 13, the Chargers, Jalen Waddle from Alabama, wide receiver. 14, back-to-back wide receivers from the same school. Devontae Smith goes 14 to the Minnesota Vikings, which I think some people will always say, they just took a guy last year. Yeah, no, that's okay. You're allowed to have multiple guys. Let's pair him up with Justin Jefferson and throw Adam Thielen in there, and let's chuck it all over the yard if you're the Vikings. And then 15, New England, who I think could be in the business of moving on from a corner. They bring in a corner, J.C. Horn.
Like that. Now, so there are 2 picks that stand out to me. One, the New York Giants and Greg Rousseau.
From Miami's side of midfield at the 49, Pickett under some pressure. Great tackle brought down by Rousseau.
I really like that because having known the Giants and their draft profile, man, they love them long, lean, and lanky off the edge. Greg Rousseau fits the profile. Reminds me a lot of Jason Pierre-Paul when they took him. And then Jalen Waddle going to the Los Angeles Chargers. Man, you talk about building strength on strength. Another playmaker to slot inside of Mike Williams and Keenan Allen with Justin Herbert. Look out. Hard trying to defend that team.
Yeah, and I mentioned it in the blurb on NFL.com. Look, they would mean they'd have to be aggressive in free agency addressing the offensive line. They have to get that accomplished this offseason. But, man, if they go get a couple starters in free agency and then now you could dedicate a second, third-round pick to the offensive line, I think they'd be okay. But just adding some speed, some big-time speed, and a player like Waddle, man, that'd be a fun offense to watch there. All right, let's keep it going here. Let's go 16 to 20. Elijah Vera Tucker, guard, going to Arizona out of USC. Kwity Paye from Michigan goes 17 to the Las Vegas Raiders. 18, the Miami Dolphins with their second first-round pick. They go with Najee Harris, running back out of Alabama. 19, the Washington football team, Christian Darrisaw, tackle from Virginia Tech. And then 20, the Bears go Kadarius Toney, a wide receiver out of Florida.
Yeah, the thing that stands out to me is the first running back coming off the board, Najee Harris, going to the Miami Dolphins.
Waddle working his way back. It seems like he might be available for the national championship game in 11 days. Hurdling is Harris, and now running down the sideline. And he's chopped out of bounds deep in Irish territory.
Natural player, you and I have talked, you talked about the Matt Forte comparison, and I believe that's a very apt comparison. His ability not only to make things happen with the ball in his hands as a runner, but to catch the ball and run routes out the backfield. For a young quarterback like Tua Tagovailoa, you need to have someone that can alleviate some of the pressure. I believe Najee Harris certainly is capable.
All right, let's keep it moving here. That would change the offense there, absolutely, when you add those two guys. 21 through 25, Greg Newsome, new name here, corner from Northwestern. He goes to the Indianapolis Colts. Now, they just got Carson Wentz. They did not have to give up a first-round pick this year, so they can supplement the roster. So I've got them going Greg Newsome. Tennessee, Jalen Phillips, edge rusher from Miami, the second edge rusher from Miami to go in the first round. The Jets, Ronnie Perkins, a new name. I got to give our guy Nabil a little love here because I was going through watching these guys, and he said, hey, have you watched Ronnie Perkins yet? I said, no, I haven't seen him. Let's see what we got. So I popped him on, and darn good football player. So I've got him going to the Jets. 24, Pittsburgh, Jalen Mayfield, tackle out of Michigan as they try and rebuild that offensive line in Pittsburgh. And then 25, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, really kind of a linebacker, big nickel, kind of do everything athlete out of Notre Dame. He goes to Urban Meyer and the Jags.
Look, man, a lot of interesting names. You got some new names. I think the one to focus on is Greg Newsome, the corner from Northwestern. Haven't seen his name talked about or heard his name talked about a lot. What is it about him that you believe suddenly he's a first-round corner?
Well, he's big. He's big, long. He's going to run in the low 4.4s, high 4.3s. So he's going to test like a freak. He's going to jump out the gym. And he's just very instinctive. He can play the football. It just is a really, really good football player that I think just kind of hasn't gotten any love through this process. I've had him in my initial top 50 list. But he's somebody that I think's got a real chance. Once he gets to this pro day process, I think you'll start hearing his name even more, Buck. That's why I have him going there to a team in Indianapolis who loves traits, and he gives you those.
He certainly gives you traits, and all you had to do is watch the Big Ten Championship game. He showed up. He was flying all over the yard. He has an opportunity to be a really solid player.
Yep, and the premium position, those guys are going to go. All right, let's go 26 through 30. Joe Tryon from Washington. He was an opt-out last year, really good edge rusher. He goes to the Cleveland Browns to play opposite of Myles Garrett. Baltimore, I've got taken Trevin Moehrig, the outstanding safety out of TCU. I think he's the best safety in the draft class. The Ravens always go best available player, so that's who he was right there, best available. 28, New Orleans. You probably want to revisit this. Mac Jones, quarterback from Alabama. 29, Tevin Jenkins, offensive tackle from Oklahoma State, goes to the Packers. He's got some versatility. He can move around as well. And then 30 is Buffalo taking Azeez Ojulari, an edge rusher, trying to get some more pass rush there for the Bills.
Oh, yeah. We have to talk about the quarterbacks. Whenever a quarterback pops up, he needs to be discussed, particularly if he's going to step in for Drew Brees. Why Mac Jones with the New Orleans Saints?
Well, look, we'll see if they end up bringing back Jameis Winston. I think you could try and do that and also bring in a Mac Jones. But I don't know that Mac Jones fits everybody. I definitely think he fits the Saints with how they play. Accuracy, anticipation, timing, all those are great traits that he possesses. The work ethic, the leadership, he checks all those boxes. I think he would be a good fit there with Sean Payton. Not a super dynamic athlete, not a huge arm, but this is an offense with the Saints that's run at a very high clip without needing those two things. So to me, I think it's a good fit.
Look, he's smart. They have the weapons around him to really allow him to shine. He does a great job of getting the ball out of his hands and allowing his playmakers on the perimeter to do work. He's really improved over the last 2 years. He is going to be a first-round pick. It's just a matter of when someone decides to pull the trigger. But with Sean Payton, with the Saints, I think it would work.
All right, 2 picks to go here. At 31, the Kansas City Chiefs get Landon Dickerson as an interior offensive lineman from Alabama, can play all 3 spots. Coming off an ACL, you've got to get okay with him medically. I just think if you're the Chiefs, it's a good risk to take because just fortify that offensive line and somebody that's a darn good football player. And then 32, I've got Nick Bolton, the linebacker, going to the Bucs.
Dowdle with blockers ahead, but a great open field tackle. There he is again, Nick Bolton.
Man, interesting pitch, but Nick Bolton stands out to me. When I think about this Bucs defense, and the last time we saw them in the Super Bowl, they were flying around like crazy. And so to put Nick Bolton beside Devin White, to be able to kind of control the middle of the defense, the middle of the field, I like it. He is an underrated prospect, even though we're saying he's a first-round talent. He certainly doesn't get enough love when we talk about some of the top players in this draft class.
Yeah, and remember, Levante David's a free agent, so if they were to lose Levante David, you slide in here with Nick Bolton. Their defense does not skip a beat. So there you have it. There's 1 through 32. I'm sure everybody agrees with every single pick. Well, Buck, it's been a fun show today. Enjoyed, especially getting a chance to visit with David Cutcliffe, who, when it comes to quarterbacks, he's as respected as there is. And, man, I took a page full of notes just in that conversation.
Yeah, one of the best in the business. What he's been able to do with quarterbacks over his time in the college football ranks is remarkable. I think he still drops some nuggets that are gold when it comes to looking at quarterbacks, evaluating quarterbacks, and developing quarterbacks.
Well, the NFL offseason is cranking. We've already seen some quarterback movement. We've got free agency right on the horizon. We're going to see a lot of shakeup when that takes place. And then that's going to get us to these pro days, which we're going to have covered for you here on NFL Network. So hang with us for those. So we've got all your draft needs covered on the Move the Six podcast. Remember, you can download that wherever you listen to your podcast. So why not tell a friend? Share the good news there. We've got you covered. And appreciate you guys hanging with us. We will catch you next time right here on Move the Sticks, presented by Castrol Edge.